Today I'm going to show you how I've created some Christmas gnome surprise slider cards. These are so much fun and they have a little message that comes up as a surprise, as well as the gnomes that pop out from behind these images that I have designed and created in Design Space using Cricut Design Space, of course. I've designed a little Santa house, a chimney, and also a Christmas tree. You don't need any cartridges to cut these. I've designed these from scratch myself, and they're so much fun and interactive to pull up and down. You can see I've done some background stamping as well to add a little bit more to the fronts of the cards. This one has the stars, and this one has a very light inking of snowflakes. The stamp set that I've used for the gnomes is the Gnome for Christmas, Close to My Heart stamp set, and that has thin cuts that come with it as well. You can see there are lots of images here to stamp, and most of them have thin cuts to go with them as well. And you can tell that the stamp sets have got thin cuts by looking at the front of the packaging or in the catalogues. If they have shading behind them, then they'll have a matching thin cut for them. On the insides of the cards, I've put a greeting. I love this set. It's a retired one, but there's lots of sets that have appropriate sayings for the insides of cards. But this one, the Very Merry Holiday or Very Merry set, is perfect for the inside of cards, so that's a keeper for me. And I've gone around the outside of each of these pieces with the stitched or the crosses here that you can see, and that just finishes it off with a little icon from the stamp set as well to tie everything in. Everything you need to create these cards, apart from the stamping, is within the Design Space file that I've created. I'll put a link in the comments area below to the other surprise slider cards that I created using the mushrooms that I did. So you can see those here. I created some mushroom slider cards with the other gnomes in the Close to My Heart collection. And I just want to run you through how to assemble the house and the tree and the chimney, and a quick construction on the slider, even though I've been through that before with the other cards that I've just shown you. I hope you enjoy this video, and I'll put some still shots of these at the end of this video for you to look at. The first element we're going to start with is the tree. You'll notice with all of the designs there is a base layer. So you start with the base layer and you build up from there. Now, I already started doing this and I forgot to put this tiny little piece on here. It does have a purpose. It's the tree trunk. So that goes on first. I've already put adhesive on the back of this and had to pull it apart. So I'll just line that up. The first layer that goes down after the tree base is a bottom layer here, and then you put the silver foil paper so that this little string of lights or circles that I've designed is nice and shiny behind it, and then that will sit on top. And that goes up a little bit more to line up perfectly to hide this white area. And then we have a little star to put on. So I'm going to use glue dots to adhere things like that. When they're that small, I find glue dots to be the best thing to use. And I have a jewel picker that I use to pick small elements up like sequins and things. I find this much easier to hold on to things, and that just grabs onto paper as well as onto sequins. So I'll put my little glue dot on there, pick that off and line it up for the top of the tree. And we have different size glue dots, so I'm using the micro dots for this. And there are tiny little stars. What I could actually do, another way of doing it, is using the piercing tool and placing the glue dots on. And I'm just scrunching them a little bit because these tiny little stars are even smaller than the micro glue dots. You could put glitter gems or anything on these. I just decided that I wanted to put these stars. And you can see how easy it is to pick up with one of these jewel pickers and position things in place. So that's the tree layer assembled. So that's the easiest one out of all the elements. It's just a couple of simple layers. I'll put that aside and we will start to make the gingerbread house or Santa's house. There are quite a few elements with this. There's a couple of windows, some snow for the top of the chimney. With the house there's a backing layer as well, and then there's a full, almost full piece cut that I've done from the wood grain paper. And then there are several pieces that act like logs going up to make it look like a little log cabin and give more depth and detail. So you might be able to see that I've already adhered some. When this comes off the mat, I've attached everything so that you can see which sections go with each other. So I just peel off each section of the house and adhere them, and there are 3 layers. So you don't have to watch me do all of those. You can see that I've put everything there already. And this is 3 layers of wood paper. And I'm going to line that up with these sections for the roof. They're fairly easy to line up because they've got the slope. So you just position them going down this way and then start at the base and move up as well. There are snow elements for the roof. So I'm going to adhere all of those together. There's 3 for each of these. Sometimes it's easier just to pick it up and position it with your hands, with your fingers, and guide things into place. And then to adhere this to the top, I'm going to put a little bit of the thin foam tape at the top here so that it's the same height as the slats that go across the house. I better make sure that you can't see it, so I'll do it from this side. And that lines up over the top of the house. Oop. As I said, it's much easier to hold things sometimes when there's lots of layers to get everything in the correct position. There's a little red part for the chimney to go on the top of the chimney. And this little bit of snow goes on the top there, and when that comes off the mat there are 4 of those to attach together and then line up on the top of the chimney. And then we'll put the door together. So the same process, there's lots of layers. You'll see with the windows there are 3 frames and then a piece to put behind it. So we'll attach all those together now as well. I've already done the 2 little windows that go on the house, but this one goes on the door, the triangle one. When it comes to the door holder, I find it really easy just to hold the element with my scissors and then run the dot roller over it. And then I can stack pieces up. And I'm going to use this jewel picker again. If you get adhesive on your Versamat, you can rub it off with the rub and erase. Normally I do everything on top of my all-purpose mat. So this is, you can just use glue or you can use your dot roller. So there's the little door handle, and now I'm going to position this in place. And then I can put my other windows in. I'll angle this a bit so you can see the layers. So the door comes up a bit from the actual house, giving it a bit more of a 3D look. And with all the snow and the windows and everything, it's not just a flat piece of paper. You can choose just to cut it out of one piece and just do single layers, but I quite like how this looks and I think it'll look really good on the card. And these pieces here are snowdrifts for the front of the house, but I'm going to put those on after I've constructed the card. So let's move on to the chimney. You can see the same sort of thing with this. There is a base, but this one's cut out of red. There was no point doing it in white. And then I've created like a little mortar bit to go over the top so that it looks like brick. So we'll just start assembling all of that together as well. Going to lift this up with some foam tape. Right, so we have all our elements, our little pieces together that the gnomes are going to pop out from. So now it's time to get into constructing the card and the slider mechanism. I've done this before with the Gnome Home Surprise cards, so I'll just run through one of them quickly and then we'll get on to sticking everything else together. So the pieces that you need for each slider are a card base, a card panel, which is already cut on the Cricut, and a little slider mechanism. 3D foam tape needs to go all the way around the outside except the top section of the card panel, and it needs to go as close as you can get it to the edge of this card panel, and this width of our foam tape is perfect for it. You don't need the thick 3D foam tape, just the regular one. And then it's a case of, I'm hoping this will show up okay. I'll just put a piece of paper underneath it so that you can see me put it together. Alright, so we have our card base. Make sure it opens the right way. And then start at the bottom, and there is an even measurement all the way around, and just adhere that down. And then you'll see that this will go on the inside, and as long as you've put your foam tape right up against the edge, it will fit quite snugly. I'll give you a couple of tips on how to line all this up so you can get your stamping with your sentiment underneath here in the right place. I've used the Border Tab stamp set, which is still available, and it has all these wonderful little words and everything, and I just decided to go with pull. And the Merry Christmas sentiment is from the Gnome for Christmas set. So the Merry Christmas that's down here was perfect to put sideways so that it comes up as a bit of a surprise when people pull. Now when you go to do this, what you would do is put your panel in before you've done any stamping or anything. Put your panel in and get a pencil and just go around where the stars are. So you can see my little markings here. But the thing that I didn't take into account was, on the first try, was how far down that needed to go, and this bit of the S pokes out, so I didn't want any of that showing. So what you need to do when you have that in is mark where your stars are, and also mark where this part of the slider mechanism starts here, so that you know how far down to put it. So I thought, oh well, I messed up on the first one. I'll just turn it over and I will do the same thing. So you can see I've marked the stars where they are. I've marked where this part is, and my Merry Christmas isn't showing. And I thought that's not going to matter. But if people have got this open and then open the card, they're going to see that on the other side. So I had to start from the beginning. Third time lucky, I got everything all measured and in the correct place. Now it's time to put together our mechanism for the card. There will be little ovals in the Design Space file, and we're going to have this little gnome popping up from the chimney because he hides perfectly behind there. But before I adhere this, I need to know how far up to have this section to attach the gnome to, so I can see as much of him as possible. So I'm actually going to line this chimney up with the very base of the card panel. And I just need some foam tape. To adhere here, and I'm just going to hang on to that bit I'm going to put him so that he covers the foam tape at the top of that oval, and then I'm going to do my other piece of foam tape here, and that's going to act as a stopper. But you can see if you put it in just like that, it's not going to move anywhere. So I can peel this off, and it is fairly forgiving as long as you haven't pressed too hard or left it for too long. I'm going to pull the slider up and put my foam tape here and put my Santa. So when that's down at the bottom, you can see that it just covers the top of that, and I want as much of him popping out as possible. So I'm going to adhere him where that base is, do a couple of little tests, and you can just see the top of his hat, so you get an idea that something is going to happen when you pull this. So now I can adhere the chimney to the card panel. You want to make sure that you leave enough area so nothing gets caught. And it's a very tight fit here, so I'm only really going to put adhesive on this area. Now this is the thicker 3D foam tape, because you've got to allow for the fact that you've got 3D foam tape underneath this gnome. And because the 3D foam tape is a really strong adhesive, it doesn't matter that I'm not going all the way to the top of the chimney, but I am going to do a little check and make sure that he's going to be able to slide out before I do the final lot of sticking. I can put just a tiny little amount on each side up here, because it's a little bit wider, just to secure the top section. And then I can peel this off and attach it to the card. And line that up. Now, I've done a little bit of an error here, so before everything gets pushed down too much, I can take that apart. And this is what happens with these. Just don't push too hard. So where I've got my little stopper, the 3D foam tape underneath here, is stopping this mechanism slide all the way down. So sometimes you do have to do a little bit of fiddling, and that's okay, because no one's going to see this part. It's all going to be covered. And I know that that is too far to have the stopper area, so I'm going to cut another little piece. And I wanted to show the whole construction of this so that you know what you have to go through to get these to work. It's better off me making mistakes on this now Right, so I'll pull that off and adhere him back down again. And I didn't push hard, so that I can see that I've still got just the top of his hat peeking out, and that slides all the way down. So that's good. Line this back up again and push it down. Be aware that you do have to make little adjustments, so don't push down too heavily with the adhesive, and then it's easy to lift things off, and then when you've got everything in place how you want it to be, you can push it down and then your slider is going to work perfectly. So this one's going to go down here, and you can see that I have done a little bit of background stamping with second generation glacier ink. I had to pull a snowflake from an old set that I have. I went through all the new sets that I have purchased for the November-December catalogue, and not one of them had a snowflake on it. So I've pulled one out that I have from last year, Whimsical Holiday. It was a special that was on, and that had just a nice little delicate snowflake on it. And I've done second generation glacier, so when you do that, you stamp onto something else and then onto the piece, so it gives a little bit of a lighter tone. I don't need this white now. I'll take that away and we'll put this one together. I think the snowflakes look really pretty in the background. So it's the same thing. You need to work out, if your gnome sits here, how far up he's got to slide to adhere, to show, sorry, not to adhere, to show behind the house. And you'll notice on this one too, oh, I haven't pushed that bit out. You'll notice on this one too, I've done a little bit of stamping along the edges with linen, which is actually on this stamp set, so it's these little crosses here. They're very easy to line up when you do them along the edge of a piece of paper. Sometimes putting your finger there gives you a good idea of where you need to put that first piece of adhesive. So I'm going to position him on, put down my house. So I'm going to push that down because I know that that's all in place. And then I'm going to position the house. And it's the same thing with this one. You don't want to put foam tape. So I'm just visually going to look at this. I'm going to move him just a little bit that way. 3D, the thicker foam tape once again. And we'll put this together. And just a little bit there, and then I'm going to position it and hold it with my fingers so I can do a little bit of a dry fit run to make sure he is going to pop up with the adhesive that I've put down. I can put a little bit on this side, so I'm going to do that just to give a little bit more stability. So the thing when you're constructing these is just to make sure that the slider element here is covered and that everything pops up and down. Now I know where that placement is. I'm going to draw a little line there so I know exactly where to put this house. And before I press too hard, I'm just doing a gentle press, and everything there is working perfectly. So I'll push that down. Now, before, I don't know if you remember, I told you about the snow to go at the front. So these are just two little pieces that I can put on to give the effect of snow. And you can see that this is quite high. So I do need to put foam tape, and I'm going to be quite generous. And then I need to put just some 3D, the thinner 3D foam tape on the top of that to make it the same height. Just run out of that one. So I'll cut this down. So the snow area here goes from one edge of the card panel to the other, and I'm putting it so that it covers that foam tape. And then this piece will go over the top. And for that I'm just going to use the dots. So that finishes off the little bit of snowdrift in front of the door. So you can see I've got my foam tape here, and about 1.5 inches from the base of the bottom is where you want to position this oval, and then a bit more foam tape for the Santa. And I'll position that over. So I want to leave this area here clear of 3D foam tape. I don't want to get in the way of there at all. And I'm going to gently put that there, make sure that everything still slides. And as I said, you can see a little bit of him peeking through, but I quite like that. It gives the idea that he's popping out from behind the tree, ready to string it with all the lovely lights. Oh, I forgot to mention, in the background I've stamped with linen ink, and I've used images from this set. So the gift, the holly, the candy cane and the star, and I've just done some random stamping just to lift that background a little bit and make it a little bit fun for this tree card.